everything's changing. And so that would happen when I did my internship with the Washington Wild Things. So what I'll be talking about is obviously the history. There's a deep root with the Wild Things. What I did during my internship, problems that occurred, there was many of them. Getting the players' information was ups and downs, getting the lineups, doing stats during the game, season getting canceled, and then what I learned. So let's start off with the history. Washington Wild Things were established in 2002. They hosted 2 All-Star weekends and would have hosted their 3rd this season, but the Frontier League canceled right before the season started. They were the 2018 East Division champions, and then was 1 game shy of winning their first ever Frontier League championship. And then recently, they signed a partnership with MLB, so I hope to see what the future holds for the Wild Things with Major League Baseball. The two people that I was in most contact with was Tony Priscilla, who is the president and general manager of the Wild Things, who granted me the opportunity to still do my internship even during the COVID times. The other one was Kyle Dawson, a former Waynesburg student who is the radio broadcaster and then just recently got a job in their ticket sales. So what did I do? At the beginning, before the players even got here, I had to get information from them so that we could form a media guide, because we was hoping to have at least a little number of fans in attendance. I had to get the lineups for not only for Kyle Dawson with the radio, but also for the scoreboard person so that he could keep track of, okay, this batter was up, so that they could change the number on the scoreboard. And then working along with the scoreboard person, I was doing the stats throughout the game. So problems that occurred. As I said before, we didn't know if we was going to have a season, because right before players would report in April, Frontier League made a press release saying that the season was going to be halted. So for that, Tony did not want to have the baseball ballpark empty through the summer. He wanted to have a season. So the fact is, how he was going to have a season that was going to be along with COVID guidelines, but also made it look natural. And then once we found out what kind of season we was going to do, was finding work before the players got there. So this was how the season was going to be formatted. It was going to be 4 teams. Tony and the Washington Wild Things was going to have 2 teams. Washington Wild Things, and then the Steel City Slam and Sammys was supposed to be one of our Steel City promotion nights, so we already had the jersey, so we might as well just go along with that team. It was going to have 60 games that was going to run from July 9th to the first week of September. It was going to be double headers, round robin style. So with that, it was going to be, so Wild Things was going to face the Sam Sammys at 3 o'clock, and then the other 2 teams that was from a third party source would play the second game, and then it would just rotate throughout the week through Thursday through Sunday. So getting the player information. So before the guys even got there, I had to put a sheet in each locker. So we used both lockers. The visiting clubhouse was going to be for the Slamming Sammys team, and then obviously the home side was going to be naturally for the Wild Things, since that's what they used. So once they got there, I had to make sure each player filled the sheet out, got it back to me. That became an issue because some guys didn't want to fill out because they were here last year. So they figured we probably already had the information, but we still wanted them to fill it out just to be like everybody else. And then once they handed it to me, I had to give him to Kyle Dawson so that he could put his radio script together and we could make the media guide for the fans. So getting the lineups during the season, I had to go to each clubhouse and ask for a lineup. Sometimes this was hard because I had to try to find a manager because he was either talking to a guy or went out to get food before the game because they would play the second game. Once I got the lineup card, then I take a picture of it so I can send it to Kyle Dawson so he can get his template ready so that everybody in the press box knows what the lineup looked like. And this is one of the pictures from one of the games. Obviously it was the Wild Things because the 2 hours before the game even started. And then that was what I would send to Kyle Dawson. So during stats during the game, it was a little tricky because if it was a normal season, the Wild Frontier League has a system called point streak that they use. Well, we couldn't use it because it was a non-regulated Frontier League. So the stat system that we use, luckily for me, was the same system that we use here for our sports. So it made it a little easier for me because I already knew the system, already knew how it worked. So before the game, I had to put the lineups that I took, put them in the system so it would be easier, so that it was easy to keep track of who was at bat, who was pitching, if there was a sub, an error, anything that goes on during the game. Throughout the game, I had to make sure after every inning that what is said on the scoreboard is what is said on my computer. If not, then we had to figure out what went wrong, if we missed a play, stuff like that. Once the game was over, I then had to finalize those stats, give them to Kyle Dawson so that he could route them off during the pregame show of the second game and run back to the clubhouses to take pictures of the lineups for the next game. So, season being cut in short. So at first, the front office decided, hey, kids are going to start going back to school. We might not have enough fans as if we normally did during July and early August. So we decided not to cancel the September part of the season. So everything was going fine. We was getting ready to pretty much almost start the playoffs. We got through the first round, and then the state called us and told us we had to shut it down because of complaints, which I will explain. So we were only allowed 250 in the stands. And one of our promos normally during the regular season gets almost a standing room only crowd. Well, COVID, some fans were scared, so they didn't come out. We went over the number. We didn't think we did, but we ended up doing it and someone reported us. And then the other complaint was because of concession stands. So what did I learn? How to work in a fast-paced environment. Typically with Waynesburg Sports, with me working with Bobby Fox in the Sports Information Department, it's usually not a fast pace. It's usually a little bit slowed down, work through the progress and all that in office setting, and then translates over to the games that I work. So I had to figure out, okay, there's a change in the lineup 30 seconds before the game even started. I had to hurry up, make the change, couldn't take my time, had to, and pretty much learn on the fly if I didn't know something that I haven't done with working here in the Sports Information Department. And then to expect the unexpected. I was not expecting at all for the season to be canceled. I thought, okay, who's going to make it all the way through, going to crown a champion. It's going to be an interesting season, but it's going to work. So with our owner and our general manager, Tony, telling us, hey, season's over, there's nothing we can do, it is what it is. So I was not expecting that at all. That's all I have.
Questions from the audience?
No one?
You mentioned how there were only 4 teams in the league. Was there ever like a point where it just seemed to get old, monotonous, and things just started?
Not really, because the other two teams that the Wild Things was holding, we was not changing our rosters at all. So once we brought in 48 some guys on first day of spring training, that's all we was going to have. We wasn't going to make changes unless someone got injured and couldn't finish the season. The other 2 teams was allowed to change whenever they wanted. They wanted to change their rosters day by day, which some weeks they did. They could. We had no control of the other 2 teams. So to get back to your question, it didn't get old. I mean, when the when the other two teams played, it was a little bit slow, like, come on, get with the game, because they played at a slower pace than what our two teams did. But other than that, it really didn't get old. I mean, I saw fans from the first day continue to come back time after time to watch baseball.
I'm a little fuzzy on the timing of all this, but I thought originally Governor Wolf made a pronouncement that sports teams were not, professional sports teams, were not going to be held under the same standard as other events. So that did not apply to you guys as a professional sports franchise?
No. I mean, with the whole concession stand
I get that part.
Yeah.
That was a mistake on my part.
But no, we still had to go by the same guidelines. The 250 were allowed in the area. Even though we were an outside venue, we was still going at 250. And then we slowly, once Governor Wolf changed the numbers, then we were slowly allowed to increase on our fans. But other than that, we was at 250.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Anybody? Okay, thank you very much. We'll make a wrap up. Same time next week.
Thanks everyone for attending this week's first round of internship presentations, but next week obviously things are invitation only because of the COVID restrictions. Thank you everyone that got invited, made your way down here to sit and watch these presentations. Next week we have Madison and Emma of our class. They're going to be presenting about their internship experience. So same time, same place next week. Thank you everyone for joining us today.